Have you ever felt like you're shouting into the void? Putting so much energy into getting the word out about your business, your passion project, that thing you just want to share with the world.
And it seems like no one's really listening, or at least not the right people.
Yeah, exactly. It can be so frustrating. But what if the secret to breaking through all that noise isn't about being louder?
What if it's about being more focused,
Mm.
more deliberate, maybe even quieter?
Intriguing. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're talking about a pretty fundamental shift in how we think about connecting with an audience.
A move away from that old mass marketing mindset, trying to reach everyone.
Right, towards something much more targeted, more intentional. We're talking about the power of the smallest viable market.
And really understanding how marketing at its core can be a force for creating real, meaningful change.
We've got some really fascinating material to unpack today, some insights that could honestly change the way you approach your work.
Absolutely. We'll be looking at a core principle for how businesses can achieve incredible success by zeroing in on a specific audience.
And drawing a lot of inspiration from Seth Godin's This Is Marketing, a book that really challenges a lot of the conventional wisdom about how marketing should work.
Yeah, Godin's got some really thought-provoking ideas in there. Our mission today is to distill all of this down to its essence, to give you actionable takeaways.
Because we want to help you understand how, by thinking smaller, by finding that core group of people who will truly resonate with what you offer.
And by focusing on making a real difference for them, you can cut through all that overwhelming noise of traditional marketing.
And end up achieving a much, much bigger impact. Okay, so let's jump right in. Why is it that this old spray and pray approach to marketing, just trying to reach everyone, why isn't that working like it used to?
Yeah, the sources we've looked at really paint a clear picture of why that's becoming less and less effective. One thing that really jumped out at me is this idea that for so long, marketing has felt like something that's done to us, not for us.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that.
Like we're bombarded with ads constantly.
Constantly. Popping up on our phones and our social media feeds, on billboards, everywhere we look, it's relentless.
It's like we're drowning in it.
Yeah.
As Godin puts it in This Is Marketing, it's like we're fish who don't even notice the water we're swimming in.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. We've just become so used to this constant flow of marketing messages that we barely even register them anymore.
It's true. And that's probably a big reason why simply trying to get the word out with flashy ads or clever slogans, it often falls flat. It just doesn't cut through the clutter anymore.
It just blends in with everything else. Godin actually says that just broadcasting a message, hoping it sticks, that isn't really marketing anymore.
Interesting. It's more like noise pollution at that point, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we also have to think about all the damage that's been done by what Godin calls shameless marketers. The ones who use spam, misleading tactics, all that stuff that just makes you roll your eyes.
Ugh, don't even get me started on spam. My inbox is a war zone. But it's true, those tactics have really created a lot of distrust around marketing in general.
Definitely. It makes people so wary of any kind of promotional message, even the genuine ones.
It's like we've all got our mental spam filter set to maximum these days.
Right. And with the sheer volume of information we're exposed to every day, our attention is incredibly valuable. And frankly, most of us are just overloaded.
So it stands to reason that effective marketing today, it's not about shouting the loudest. It's about making it easy for the right people to find you, to understand your value, to connect with what you're offering.
Exactly. And that brings us to a pretty fundamental shift in perspective.
Yeah.
Thinking about marketing as the art of creating change.
Well, that's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah, marketing argues that at its core, marketing is about initiating a change you want to see in the world.
Not just about selling more widgets, right?
Right. And a crucial part of that is identifying and serving a specific group of people you genuinely care about.
So the key question becomes, who can I help? Instead of just, how can I sell more of this?
Exactly. And that's a really powerful shift in thinking. It means marketing isn't just about pushing products or services. It's about changing minds, influencing behaviors, even shaping entire systems.
It's about making a difference, leaving the world a little better than you found it.
Yeah, I love that. But what's also really interesting is recognizing that even the most groundbreaking ideas, the ones that really have the potential to make a huge impact, they don't get adopted overnight.
It's true. People are creatures of habit.
There's a natural resistance to anything that disrupts the familiar, that asks us to change our ways.
Right. We get comfortable with what we know.
And even when presented with something better, something that could genuinely improve our lives, there's often a hesitation.
We tend to look around, see what others are doing, see if it's safe before we jump in ourselves.
Exactly. So even if you have the most valuable, insightful work, you need a thoughtful strategy to connect with the right people. And part of that is understanding that successful adoption, the spread of an idea, it's rarely accidental. It has to be designed for that.
Intentionally built into the process from the start.
Exactly. And that takes us back to this idea of serving your audience. In the book, Godin beautifully defines marketing as a generous act of helping someone solve a problem, their problem.
That's a really nice definition.
Right. It's about understanding their needs deeply, not just focusing on your own objectives.
And this might be one of the most important points Godin makes. What you say isn't nearly as important as what others say about you.
It's that social proof, that word of mouth, that really makes the difference.
That's when you know you're onto something, when people start talking about it organically. Now, both of our sources really emphasize this point. Change happens through stories, connections, and experiences. It's not just about throwing facts and figures at people.
It's about making it human, making it relatable, making it something people can connect with on an emotional level.
Absolutely. I think marketing uses a great example to illustrate this point. Vision Spring. They provide affordable eyeglasses to people in India who need them, a really noble mission.
And what I find so insightful is how they approach it. They offer low-cost glasses and work with local people who travel to different communities to sell them.
And the brilliance is in recognizing that for many of these individuals, buying something new isn't this casual, enjoyable experience like it might be for someone with more disposable income.
For them, it could be a huge risk. It's a big decision to spend what might be very limited resources on something they're not sure about.
And that really highlights this crucial point. You have to understand your audience's worldview, their context, what's important to them. You can't just assume everyone sees the world the same way you do.
Exactly. And this is where just focusing on marketing tactics without really understanding those underlying motivations, it just falls short.
You have to know who it's for and what it truly delivers on an emotional level. You know, it's that classic saying, people don't want a quarter-inch drill bit, they want a quarter-inch hole. But it goes even deeper than that.
It's not even about the hole. No one really wants a hole. What they want is what that hole represents.
The shelf on the wall, the feeling of an organized space, the sense of accomplishment, or maybe even the admiration of others when they see it.
Exactly. It's about those deeper emotional drivers.
Sure.
Belonging, connection, peace of mind, status. The product or service is just the vehicle to get them there.
It makes you think about how we present things, doesn't it? We get so caught up in the features and benefits, but it's really about how it makes people feel.
Totally. And this is where understanding your audience's worldview is so crucial. There's this example in the book about JCPenney, the department store. When their former CEO tried to eliminate all discounts, assuming his customers felt the same way he did about shopping,
Oh, no.
sales absolutely plummeted. It turned out his assumptions about his customers were completely wrong.
Ouch. That's a tough lesson to learn. But it's a good reminder that our own biases and assumptions can really blind us to what's actually going on in the market. And that's where I think this idea of creating personas can be so helpful.
Personas?
Yeah, it's like creating these fictional characters that represent different segments of your target audience.
So like Bargain Betty, who's always looking for a deal.
Yeah.
Or tech-savvy Tom, who wants the latest gadgets.
Exactly. It can be a really practical way to step outside of your own head and consider the different attitudes, beliefs, and motivations that are going to influence people's decisions. It helps you tailor your message to resonate with those specific mindsets.
So it's not just about understanding what people want, but also why they want it, right?
Absolutely. And that leads us to this principle of focusing on the smallest viable market, a really central idea from our other source.
The idea of going narrow instead of wide.
Precisely. It's about identifying that core group of individuals who would be absolutely delighted by what you offer, the people who would get the most value from it, who would become your biggest fans, your evangelists.
And the strategy is to really go deep with understanding their specific needs, their desires, and, as we've been talking about, their worldview.
Because by tailoring your product, your service, your messaging to deeply resonate with this smaller, highly engaged group, you build much stronger, more meaningful connections.
And you make much better use of your resources.
Right.
Instead of spreading yourself thin, you're focusing your energy where it's most likely to make a real impact.
Exactly. And ultimately, that focused approach can lead to more sustainable growth because those enthusiastic early adopters become your best advocates. They spread the word, they bring in more people like them.
It creates that snowball effect. There's a great example, and this is marketing, about the Union Square Cafe in New York City.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that place.
When they first opened, the founders knew they could only serve around 600 people a day. So instead of trying to appeal to everyone in the city, they focused on which 600 people they wanted to delight.
The ones who would really appreciate what they offered, who would become regulars.
Exactly. That focus on their ideal customer was a key factor in their long-term success.
It's like that famous quote, if you're trying to please everyone, you're going to end up pleasing no one. And this aligns perfectly with Steve Blank's idea of customer development. He says a startup's primary focus should be on gaining traction with a specific group of customers, finding that perfect fit between what you're creating and what they actually want and need.
It's that early validation that matters, not just having the best technology or the biggest marketing budget.
Right. And it's about resisting that urge to try to be everything to everyone, to smooth out your unique edges in an attempt to fit in. You want to stay true to your vision, to what makes you special.
So don't dilute your message. Go deep with the select few. There's this great quote by Clay Shirky that really resonates with me. Big things can be done for love.
Ooh, I like that.
The initial goal isn't necessarily mass appeal, but finding those people who will genuinely fall in love with your work. Their passion becomes the fuel for growth.
It becomes contagious. And This Is Marketing has a really compelling case study that shows this in action, the Open Heart Project. They started with this deep sense of empathy, focusing on a small, well-defined market, people who are looking for accessible and secular meditation practices.
And they really aligned their approach with their audience's worldview. They made it easy to share, earn trust through consistent value, and offered ways to go deeper.
It's about meeting people where they are, on their own terms. And at the heart of it all is this understanding that everyone experiences feelings of loneliness, insecurity, and everyone cares deeply about something.
So instead of pushing your agenda, it's about dancing with them, understanding their needs, their aspirations, and connecting with them authentically.
It's about becoming that spot on the map with edges that some people want to find, as Godin puts it. You're not shouting for everyone's attention. You're a beacon for those who are specifically looking for what you offer.
It's a much more inviting approach, isn't it?
Absolutely. So once you've identified this smallest viable market, this core group of people you want to reach, how do you really stand out from the competition? How do you connect with them in a meaningful way?
That's where finding your edge comes in. This Is Marketing suggests a really cool way to think about this. It's about analyzing the competitive landscape strategically.
So not just blindly throwing yourself into the mix.
Right. They suggest using a simple two-axis framework where each axis represents something your potential customers really care about.
Like price, speed, quality, convenience, ethical sourcing, things like that.
Exactly. And when you plot the existing options on this chart, you can often see where it's really crowded, where everyone's fighting for attention.
And the danger there, of course, is getting lost in the noise. Unless you have a ton of money to spend on advertising, it's tough to stand out when you're just one of many seemingly similar options.
So blending in is usually not a good strategy. The alternative is to create your own space, your own quadrant. Find two axes that have been overlooked or undervalued by the existing players.
So you're not competing directly, you're creating your own category.
Exactly. And then you build an authentic story around your offering that aligns with those axes, something unique, something that resonates. That way, you become the obvious choice for a specific niche audience.
Because you're offering something they can't find anywhere else. And here's a really key point. Your overall strategy, your commitment to a certain way of operating, the story you tell, the promises you keep, that's far more important than any individual tactic.
Tactics are just the tools. Strategy is the blueprint.
Love that analogy. Okay, so you found your edge, you're connecting with your ideal customer. What happens next?
Well, that's when the magic really starts to happen. You start to see the virtuous cycle and network effects kicking in.
Meaning?
Happy customers don't just stay loyal. They become your biggest advocates. They tell their friends, they share on social media, they spread the word organically.
They become your marketing team.
Exactly. And your work really takes off when people are excited to talk about it. That's why it's so important to create something that actually becomes more valuable as more people use it.
Like the early days of email or social media platforms, their value increases exponentially as the network grows.
Exactly. That's the power of network effects. And it wasn't advertising that made those things popular. It was their inherent utility. The fact that they worked better when more people were involved.
That's so cool. This is marketing uses the example of the fax machine and Ethernet, too.
Mhm.
Their adoption wasn't driven by marketing campaigns. It was driven by users.
It was that inherent remarkability that made them spread. And that brings us to a really interesting concept, the mass market versus true fans.
Okay, break that down for me.
The book talks about Kevin Kelly's idea of 1,000 true fans. It's the idea that you don't need millions of followers to be successful.
You just need a smaller group of people who truly love what you do.
Exactly. And they'll support you, buy your products, come to your shows, whatever it is you offer.
So instead of chasing after the vast anonymous mass market, you focus on building deep connections with this core group.
And often that's a much more sustainable and fulfilling path, especially for creators and small businesses. The book uses the example of the Grateful Dead.
Oh yeah, the legendary jam band.
They only ever had one top 40 hit and were considered pretty niche, but they generated hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue.
Wow, how did they do that?
Through their incredibly loyal fan base, their fans would travel all over to see them play, buy all their albums. It was amazing.
That's the power of true fans. They weren't chasing mainstream popularity. They were focused on serving their dedicated audience.
And that's a really different approach than, say, a pop star who's trying to create hit after hit for the charts.
Right, it's about building a lasting connection, a community, not just churning out fleeting hits.
Exactly. And it's important to recognize that not everyone is going to love what you do. There are always going to be people who just aren't your target audience.
And that's okay.
Totally. The book points to the bimodal distribution of reviews. You know, how some products get rave reviews and others get harsh criticism, even if they're both objectively good.
Like the Harry Potter books, people either love them or hate them, right?
Exactly. Trying to please everyone is a recipe for disaster. It dilutes your message and can alienate your true fans.
So, embrace the fact that you're not going to be for everyone. And this is a really interesting exercise. Try to understand why some people might not choose you. What are their needs, their priorities, their existing beliefs?
Because when you understand their reasons, you can see that their decision makes sense from their perspective.
It's about developing empathy, even for the people who don't choose you.
And that allows you to be more confident in your own path, to better serve those who do align with your vision. Okay, so we've talked about finding your people, connecting with them. What about influencing their behavior?
Yeah, how do you get people to actually take action?
Well, one really powerful principle that both of our sources touch on is the idea that people like us do things like this.
Meaning we're heavily influenced by our social groups.
Exactly. Our tribes, our communities, they shape our behavior, our decisions, what we consider normal or acceptable.
We look to our peers to see what's cool, what's trendy, what's the right thing to do.
Absolutely. And this marketing uses a really great example to illustrate this. The campaign for the Ireland gay marriage referendum.
That was a historic moment.
It was. And the campaign was incredibly successful. They focused on this inclusive idea of us, of shared national identity.
It wasn't about abstract legal arguments. It was about belonging, about love, about family.
Exactly. And it worked. It shows how cultural norms can be intentionally shaped and reinforced. Your work, your offering, can be a signal to your community. It can say, this is what we believe, this is how we behave.
It's about creating a sense of shared identity.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got our tribe, we're building trust, but how do we really grab their attention? How do we get them to act?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
It is. And a big part of it is understanding the interplay of trust and tension.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Essentially, we're always navigating between offering something that feels familiar, something that fits into people's existing routines and beliefs.
Like a pattern match.
Exactly. Versus something new and different, something that disrupts those patterns. A pattern interrupts.
And most people prefer the familiar, right? Change can be scary.
It can be. So to break through those established patterns, to get people to pay attention to something new, you need a certain level of tension.
Like a hook, something that creates intrigue or a sense of urgency.
Exactly. And a great example of this is Slack.
The messaging app.
Yep. When it first came out, it required teams to fundamentally change how they communicated.
Which is never easy.
Right. But they captured the enthusiasm of early adopters and leveraged those network effects we talked about earlier. The more people used it, the more valuable it became, which created a powerful incentive for others to join in.
It disrupted the status quo, the way we were all used to communicating via email. And tension can also be created through scarcity, the fear of missing out, that classic FOMO.
Definitely. Limited time offers, exclusive access, those things can motivate people to take action.
Makes sense. We all hate feeling left out.
Right. And another big driver of tension is status.
How so?
People are very aware of their standing within their social circles. They want to be seen as knowledgeable, successful, part of the in-group.
And marketing can tap into that by offering ways to enhance their status, to signal their belonging or their achievement.
Exactly. Think about luxury brands, for example. They're not just selling products. They're selling a certain image, a certain lifestyle.
A sense of exclusivity, of being part of something special.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, your marketing story, your message, needs to create some level of tension to get people to act. It needs to disrupt the status quo, to give them a compelling reason to pay attention and embrace the change you're offering.
Otherwise, they'll just stick with what they know, with what's comfortable. Okay, so we've talked about creating tension, but how do we make sure our message is actually being understood the way we intend it?
That takes us to the fascinating world of semiotics, symbols, and vernacular.
Sounds complicated.
It's not as complex as it sounds. Basically, it's the study of how we communicate through symbols.
So not just words, but logos, images, colors, even the tone of our language.
Exactly. All of those things carry meaning. They evoke certain associations in our minds.
So like a brand logo can communicate a whole set of values and ideas without even saying a word.
Exactly. Think about the Nike swoosh. It represents athleticism, achievement, aspiration. It's instantly recognizable and evokes a whole set of emotions.
It's powerful. But a poorly chosen typeface can make a brand look unprofessional or even untrustworthy.
Exactly. Every detail matters. As marketers, we need to be aware that not everyone interprets symbols the same way.
Right. Different cultures, different demographics, different individuals, they're all going to bring their own interpretations to the table.
So we need to choose symbols that resonate with our target audience, and sometimes even create new symbols to communicate our unique message.
To create a brand identity that truly stands out. And it's not just about the visual elements either. The words we choose, the way we structure our sentences, the tone of our voice, it all communicates something.
Everything communicates. Even the physical environment you create during an in-person interaction can make a huge difference.
Like if you're trying to sell a high-end product, you probably don't want to meet your clients in a dingy coffee shop.
Exactly. And here's a really important point. If your communication accidentally reminds people of a scam or something negative they've experienced, it can be really hard to build trust.
It triggers those mental alarm bells.
Right. It creates an instant barrier. And this brings us to a fascinating paradox about innovation. You need to be new and different enough to stand out, to grab attention.
But also familiar enough to feel safe, to build trust.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance. And that leads us to understanding the curve of innovation and enrollment.
Okay, tell me more about that.
It comes from Everett Rogers' work on how new ideas and technologies spread. He found that people adopt things at different rates.
Some people are early adopters, always eager to try the latest thing, while others are more resistant to change.
Exactly. And as a marketer, it's crucial to understand where your target audience falls on this curve.
Because you don't want to waste time and energy trying to convince people who are never going to be your customers anyway.
Right. Focus your efforts on the early adopters, the people who are already open to new ideas and actively looking for solutions.
They'll become your champions, your evangelists.
Exactly. And this idea of enrollment is really important too. It's about people choosing to embrace your offering, to become active users or supporters.
It has to be a mutual and consensual act.
Exactly. The best marketers earn this enrollment by connecting with people who already desire the change they're offering.
You're not forcing it on them. You're finding the people who are already looking for what you provide.
Exactly. And this is where your overall strategy becomes so important, separate from the individual tactics you use.
Because tactics are just the specific actions, like social media posts or email campaigns, but your strategy is the bigger picture.
It's the change you're trying to create in the world, the impact you're aiming for.
And your tactics should always serve that bigger goal.
Always. And when you're consistently communicating your message, it's crucial to understand the dip in frequency.
The dip.
Yeah, there's often a big gap between when you, as the creator or marketer, start to feel like you're repeating yourself endlessly.
Like you're beating a dead horse.
And when your audience actually starts to hear it, internalize it, and take action.
Because we're all so bombarded with information these days that it takes time for a message to really sink in.
Exactly. And so many promising projects fail because the creators give up just before they reach that critical point.
They get discouraged and stop communicating their message right before it starts to resonate.
It's a classic mistake. So persistence and consistent communication are key to overcoming that dip.
It's about staying the course, even when it feels like no one's listening.
Absolutely. Okay, shifting gears a bit, the courses also talk about this idea of the power of free and what to charge for.
Interesting. So, like giving away free content to attract customers.
Exactly. Offering valuable content or introductory services for free can be a great way to build awareness, attract potential customers, and establish trust.
It's like a sample, a taste of what you offer.
Precisely. But obviously, free stuff doesn't generate revenue directly. So the key is to combine those free offerings with paid offerings that provide more value or solve deeper problems.
So, the free stuff is the gateway, the entry point that leads people to your paid solutions.
Exactly. And building trust is especially important for transactions that involve higher risk or a bigger financial investment.
People are naturally more cautious when they're putting more on the line.
So free content can be a great way to build that trust, to show them that you're the real deal.
And that leads us to the concept of permission marketing.
Yeah, this is about moving away from interruptive marketing, from bombarding people with messages they didn't ask for,
It's about earning the privilege to communicate with people who actually want to hear from you.
who would miss you if you were gone.
That's the goal. So how do we do that?
By treating people's attention as a valuable resource, not something to be taken for granted, you earn permission by consistently providing value, by being relevant, by building a relationship.
So it's not just about collecting email addresses, it's about cultivating a genuine connection.
Exactly. And it's much more effective to build your own permission assets, like an email list of engaged subscribers, than to rely on the ever-changing algorithms of social media platforms.
You own that connection. It's not dependent on someone else's rules.
Precisely. And those early adopters we talked about earlier can be incredibly valuable in helping you gain that initial permission and build your core audience.
They're the ones who are most likely to spread the word and invite others in.
Exactly. And this whole cycle of building trust and earning permission, it's really the foundation of sustainable marketing success. Okay, ready to dive into another concept.
Hit me with it.
Let's talk about the funnel and the long tail.
Okay, I'm all ears.
The marketing funnel, you're probably familiar with that idea. It's a process of moving people from awareness to purchase, with different stages along the way.
Right, like first they become aware of your brand, then they become interested, then they consider making a purchase, and finally they become customers.
Exactly. And it's important to understand the conversion rates at each stage of that funnel to see where people are dropping off, where you might need to make adjustments.
Makes sense. You need to know where the leaks are in your pipeline.
Exactly. Now, the long tail is this fascinating phenomenon that the internet has created. It's the idea that there's a huge market for niche products and services that wouldn't have been viable before.
Because now you can reach people all over the world who share your specific interests.
Exactly. But while the long tail offers incredible opportunities, it can be challenging to build a thriving business solely on the aggregation of many small sales.
So you might need to create a hit, something that appeals to a larger portion of your target audience and establishes you as a major player.
Exactly. And there's often a significant gap between those early adopters and the mainstream market, what's called the chasm.
Right, the early adopters are more forgiving, more willing to try new things, but the mainstream market needs more convincing.
So to bridge that chasm, you need a really compelling story, one that resonates with a broader audience. The book talks about the story of self, story of us, story of now.
So like a personal journey, a shared experience, something that feels relevant and timely.
Exactly. Think about Tesla. They didn't just sell electric cars to environmentalists. They created a story about performance, luxury, and the future of transportation.
They disrupted the entire automotive industry.
Exactly. Okay, one last important concept to touch on. Ethical marketing and choosing your impact.
Ethics are always important, but especially in marketing where it's so easy to be manipulative or misleading.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, transparent and ethical marketing practices are always going to be more sustainable. Building trust is a long game, and it's worth playing it the right way.
It's about doing the right thing, even when no one's watching.
And it's also important to remember that feedback on your work, whether it's positive or negative, is about the work itself, not about you as a person.
Don't take it personally.
Exactly. Separate your identity from your creations. And ultimately, marketing is about bringing value to the world. It's about making a positive impact.
So if you have something to offer that could truly benefit people, don't be afraid to share it.
Exactly. Holding back is almost like stealing from the people who could benefit from your work.
That's a powerful way to put it.
Yeah.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what would you say is the most important takeaway for our listeners today?
I think it all comes down to this. Focus your marketing efforts on that smallest viable market. Identify those people who will truly resonate with what you offer, who will become your biggest fans.
Understand their worldviews, their needs, their desires, tell stories that connect with them on an emotional level, and build relationships based on trust and authenticity.
And remember, it's not about being.
Have you ever felt like you're shouting into the void? You know, putting so much energy into getting the word out about your business, your passion project, that thing you just want to share with the world.
And it seems like no one's really listening, or at least not the right people.
Yeah, exactly. It can be so frustrating. But what if the secret to breaking through all that noise isn't about being louder?
What if it's about being more focused,
Mm.
more deliberate, maybe even quieter?
Intriguing. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're talking about a pretty fundamental shift in how we think about connecting with an audience.
A move away from that old mass marketing mindset, trying to reach everyone.
Right, towards something much more targeted, more intentional. We're talking about the power of the smallest viable market.
And really understanding how marketing at its core can be a force for creating real, meaningful change.
We've got some really fascinating material to unpack today, some insights that could honestly change the way you approach your work.
Absolutely. We'll be looking at a core principle for how businesses can achieve incredible success by zeroing in on a specific audience.
And drawing a lot of inspiration from Seth Godin's This Is Marketing, a book that really challenges a lot of the conventional wisdom about how marketing should work.
Yeah, Godin's got some really thought-provoking ideas in there. Our mission today is to distill all of this down to its essence, to give you actionable takeaways.
Because we want to help you understand how, by thinking smaller, by finding that core group of people who will truly resonate with what you offer.
And by focusing on making a real difference for them, you can cut through all that overwhelming noise of traditional marketing.
And end up achieving a much, much bigger impact. Okay, so let's jump right in. Why is it that this old spray and pray approach to marketing